Hello everyone, welcome to the HOTH, and this workshop is about Intro to Game Dev. You can access the slide using the tiny URL link at the middle, and if you want to access the GitHub repo, then you can access it by using the link at the left bottom corner here. So throughout this workshop, we'll go over what a Pygame is, and we'll do setup for the Pygame, and we'll learn some basic syntax of Python. And moving on to game dev, we are going to learn about the workflow, how to design, how to plan out for game dev, and we'll learn some game dev skills through a demo. And lastly, I'll go over some tips for the game dev project that you guys will submit for HOTH. So, a Pygame is a Python library for creating 2D games specifically. In Pygame, you can create your own computer game world using a set of tools. So if you go to this website here called itch.io/games/made with Pygame, you can see a lot of Pygame examples made by different users. So actually, if you go here, you can select a random game here, and you can download the game as well, and you can read how you can design, how you can play the game as well. Okay, let's move on to setting up our device for the Pygame. If you're using Mac or Apple device, you can go to your terminal and type the following command. Let's do that right now. So go to terminal and we type python 3-m pip install pygame-ce. So I'm not gonna download the file again because I already downloaded, but if you run this command, then you'll probably see something like this, indicating that you have successfully installed Pygame. So in order to test whether your Pygame installation has succeed, you can go to your code editor such as VS Code and type import spacebar Pygame to see if Pygame has actually been installed successfully. So I'll open my VS Code, and I already created the test.py file, and if I type import Pygame, meaning I'm importing the Pygame library so that I can use some Pygame features for my code. And if I run the code by clicking this run code button, or you can also do python test.py, and if the output says no error, then that indicates that you have successfully installed the Pygame library. Okay, moving on to some basic Python syntax. So during this workshop, I'll go over 3 concepts for basic Python syntax: operator, conditional statement, and loop, which essentially consist of an entire game system design. But you can definitely refer to other tutorials and other YouTube videos to learn more advanced skills. And we also have game dev demo later in this slide, so you can also gain some hands-on experience through that demo as well. So the operator is basically line of code that do something. For example, here, if we say a equals 10, we set the a variable to be 10. So later on, if we refer to a, that means we're referring to the number 10. For example, if we print a times 5, then that would give us 50. And the second one here is called print. Print basically gives you an output in the terminal. For example, if I do print hello HOTH, and if I save the file and run the code, you can see down here at the terminal it says hello HOTH. Just to do a short review for you guys, what happens if I assign 10 to A and inside the print function we put A? Correct. We'll get 10 as an output because we saved 10 to our variable A, and by printing A or by getting an output of A, we're gonna get the value that is stored in the A, which is 10. Awesome, great. Moving on to conditional statement, we use the syntax called if, and then after if we put condition, colon, and the line below we put the operator we want. For example, let's say we want to check whether the value A contains 10 or not. So if A is equal to 10, then we simply print A is 10. If we save the file and if we run it again, you can see that it says A is 10. What happens if we change A to some other value, for example 5? Well, then since this if conditional statement is not true, so we're not gonna run this operator print here. And you can see we have no output and the Python file just ended. We can use this if statement to see whether the player is alive, maybe by checking if their HP is greater than 0, or we can check if the score has reached the goal. For example, if we have a score variable, say score, and we keep, let's say, an integer variable of the score into this score variable, and at the end, let's say if you want to make a game that says congratulations if the player's score is above 100, then you can do something like if score is greater than 100, say we print congrats. Okay, great. So let's move on to the loop statement. So loop basically allows you to repeatedly run the same code until the condition becomes false. For example, we might want to run the game until the player dies, say until the player's HP goes below 0 or something like that. So if we set an while loop that says player HP to be greater than 0 and some code that runs the game. This way, as long as the player HP is greater than 0, meaning if player's HP is positive, then the game will repeatedly run this code. And here we have game dev workflow that might be helpful for you guys to plan out how your game is going to look like and how you're going to design your game. So we first define the idea of the game. In other words, what is your game about? Say, we can choose the type of the game, maybe you have an expecting runtime of the game, etc. And once that's done, we have to set up for the game. So we're gonna set up the necessary elements for the game, for example, window, player, controls, or even enemies, etc. And once that setup is done, we're gonna build the game, meaning we're gonna apply all the rules and mechanics of the game. For example, If the player press the right arrow key, then we make the character to move to right, or if the player press the spacebar, then we make player to jump. And lastly, once you're done with building the game, you have to test the game by running the Python code and see if your control works correctly, and see if the game actually made the goal of your expected runtime, or if the game actually outputs your expected outcome. Great, so we're gonna do a short demo here to make you guys feel more comfortable on building code with Pygame using an example. So first I'll import Pygame library so that I can use all the tools, and then I'm also going to import another file called random. This allows me to generate a random number so that I can use it for my game. And in order to initialize your Pygame, you have to do pygame.init, and then you also have to set up for the windows. Set up for the window. You can do this by defining a variable named screen and say pygame.display.setMode, and you put the width and height of the screen, and say, and we might also want to decide the name of the game file, so we can do that by pygame.display.setCaption, and I'm gonna make a game called Dodge the Squares. Awesome. And let's move on to our player section. So we want to decide the player's initial position and the speed of the player. Player X is 400, and we want the player's Y coordinate to be 500, and we want the player's speed to be, let's say, 0.7. And what I want to make for this game demo is that it's called the, you can see here, it's called the Dodge the Square, and I want to make a game so that from the top of the screen, blocks are randomly spawned and they drop, and player can dodge the blocks by pressing the right arrow and the left arrow. And at the end, we determine the score based on the number of squares that player has dodged successfully. So now let's move on to setting up the block. We can pretty much use the similar logic for blocks X and Y coordinate, except that we want to make this blocks X coordinate to be random. So that's the reason why we imported random library at line 2. And by doing that, we can use some random functions that generate random integer. Rand_int, and you're going to put 2 arguments which decides the lower bound and the upper bound for the random integer. And we want the block's Y coordinate to be fixed to -50, which is above the screen, and then we want to set the block's speed to be 0.4. So it'll drop from the sky, from the top of the screen with a speed of 0.4. Now let's set up the score. Initially the score should be 0 when the player starts the game, and say and we want to define the font to display the score as well. So we define pygame.font non and 36, which is a default font and its size is 36. And there's one recommendation for coding your game dev using Pygame is to run the code frequently so that it doesn't generate any error. As you can see, I already got an error in line 22 because I made a typo for the font. And you can see it runs successfully without creating any errors. Great. Now we want to define some Boolean variables to control the state of the game. So playing basically meaning if the player is still alive or not. And we also define a variable called game over, which decides whether the game is over or not. And we need the initial value of false for the game over because we don't want our game to be just terminated as soon as we run the game. Awesome. And now let's move on to the game loop, which is going to repeatedly run the game so that player can continuously move and dodge the blocks. So we define a running variable to be true, and while running is true, we want to do the following. First, we want to handle the event. So for event in pygame.event.get, which is gonna bring all the Python events and save each of them in event. And if event type is equal to pygame.quit, indicating we're closing the tab for the game, and we set running to be false. So if our event type were to be quit, a pygame.quit, then the running value now become false. And since the conditional statement here in the while loop doesn't satisfy anymore, so we're gonna break out of the loop. And if playing is true, we set keys to be pygame.key.getPressed. This is gonna allow us to get which key we're pressing right now. And then now we want to see if the player clicked the left arrow key or right arrow key and then allow them to move. So we're gonna do if keys pygame.kleft, indicating it's a left arrow key. Then we're gonna set player's x coordinate, and then we subtract the player speed from it. So basically, if we press the left arrow key, then player's x gonna be decreased by the player speed amount, which will make it seem like the player is moving towards left. But if we don't want the situation where the player goes out of the box, I'll show you why this one is important. So say we run the code. Oh wait. Oh, I was supposed to do get the pressed. We save the file, we run the file, and for now we cannot see like the player's where the player is because we didn't define the image or like how the player looks like, but I'm gonna show you later on how this one works. So basically, if the current index of player is not greater than 0, then we're not supposed to allow player's x to be decreased because That'll make player's x coordinate to be negative and eventually make the player goes out of the screen. And we're gonna do the pretty similar logic for the right arrow key as well. And in this case, we want the player's x to be less than 750, which is our display, which is approximately the same as our width of the player screen. And in this case, we want to add player speed to player's x coordinate. And now we're gonna define the blocks movement here. So for every tick, or for every duration of time, we want the block to drop from the sky. So we set block y, and then we add block speed to it. Since we defined block speed to be positive, the block y should continue increase and it'll drop from the top, and then it'll continue drop with the speed of block speed. And if block y is greater than 600, indicating it hit the bottom, then we basically want to reset the block's y coordinate to be -50 so that it can go to the top again. And then we want to decide the block's x coordinate to be a random integer between 0 and 750. And we add 1 to score, because this case here indicates that we have successfully dodged the block. And now we want to determine whether the block has hit the player. So now we're gonna define the player's rectangle, and pygame dot, we can use the library rect indicating the rectangle, and this basically gets 4 arguments. It's x coordinate, it's y coordinate, and width and height. And we do the pretty much same thing for block as well. Block dot rectangle, block dash x, block dash y. And we want this to have the same size as player. If you want your block to be smaller than the player, then you can definitely set it to be something like 30 and 30, but for now I'll just keep it as 50 and 50. And we have to detect whether the player rectangle and block rectangle has collided, so we say player rect. We're gonna use the function called collides rect, and if the player rectangle has collided with block rectangle, then we're gonna set the playing to be false. This will allow us to stop the game, and then we set game over to be true. Okay, so now we have all the engines or like mechanics done. But since we didn't define the drawing of the game, we cannot see like what's happening in the game. It might be a case where we already got hit by the block and these two variables has been already set to be false and true. So in order to see like those elements in the game, we're gonna draw the gameplay. If you do screen.fill, this will basically get the RGB color, and since RGB000 is black, we're gonna fill the screen with black color, and then we're gonna draw the player rectangle and the block rectangle. We can do that by using the draw function, and inside the screen we want to set the color of the player to be 255, 0 and 0, indicating, I think 255, 0, 0 is red because it goes from red, green, and blue. And we also have to set the coordinate and their size as well. So we put player's coordinate and size as the second argument. And we're gonna do pretty much the same thing for the blocks as well. And I want those blocks to be blue, so I'll put 255 at the end. And we have to use blocks X and Y coordinates, and their size should be 50 times 50. Okay, I think at this point, if we run the code, we can see the block. Oh, not yet. Okay. Oh, because we have to define the draw again. So score text to be font render, and we want to basically print the score on the screen. So we say score colon score. This is gonna allow us to access to the score variable and actually print it to the screen. And we set the second argument to be true, and we want our color to be white. And screen.build text, we say 10 by 10, and hopefully, oh, it should be screen.bleed. Sorry, my fault. Interesting. So, okay, so let's keep code until we get the screen's draw function. And if now we're going to define the else if statement. So if it's game over, then we'll do game over. We're gonna draw the game over screen. So screen.fill 0, 0, 0, and game over text font render. Say game over score is, again, we access the score variable. So we set to be true, and we're gonna use the white color. And we want player to say player to input the Q to quit the game. So we will first render the text saying press Q to quit, and set the second argument to be true, and this time as well we set the third argument to be complete white. And we do screen.split game over text, and we want to align this text to come at the center, so we do 800 divided by 2 subtracted by 100, and we do 600 divided by 2 and subtracted by 20. And we'll do the same thing for the quit text as well. And this code itself is gonna just print this line saying game over score and press Q to quit. So even if we click the Q, it's not gonna allow us to actually quit the game. So we're gonna do keys equal to pygame.key.getPressed. And before I explain what's gonna happen here, can you guys pause the video and try to guess what the pseudocode or what the logic would be for for this line? Yeah, so we're gonna see if the key pressed is actually Q, and if so, we're gonna set the running value to be false. In this case, since running becomes false, we're gonna quit the loop and it's going to be over. And for each loop, now we're gonna display what we have so far on the game. Pygame.display.flip, and at the end we basically want to clean up all the stuff, so pygame.quit, and we say print game over, final score is score. Now we save the file, and if we run it, you can see if I press the left arrow key, I move to left, and if I press right arrow key, I move to right. And because of this player move logic I defined here, if player's x is greater than 0, it doesn't allows us to move to right. So if we press the left, it's going to go to left if and only if the player's x coordinate is greater than 0. And since the left corner has the x coordinate of 0, so it won't allow me to operate this line even if I press the left arrow key continuously. And the same logic works for the right wall as well. Now let's see what's gonna happen if I get hit by the block. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake here. Oh, so since we set like these two coordinates to be equal to each other, these two texts are displayed on the same coordinate. So what I just did was, by changing this coordinate to be plus 20, I kind of differentiate the y coordinates of these two following texts. So I'll try to run this again, and I'll just get hit by the thing intentionally, and yeah, now it works. And you can see if I click the Q, then this if statement is going to be true, and it'll set the running variable to be false, meaning we're gonna get out of this while loop and then eventually run the pygame.quit, and at the console it has to print the game over, final score equals 0 in this case. Yay, it works. Okay, so that was a demo for a simple game dev, and I hope you guys learned the overall game dev architecture and overall game dev logic using Pygame 3. Here I have some tips for game dev for your HOTH project. You can refer to pygame.org/docs to access more variety of like libraries or functions that can be helpful to your game development. And for tips, please follow the game dev workflow, this workflow here, because if you change logic, or if you change the entire design of the game in the middle of the development, it's going to be so hard for you to like fix the codes, and you might have to just redo all the coding from the beginning. So please please get prepared and do the correct setup and make the correct idea before you move on to the build. And also, please test if your game is working as you intended. And also, you can debug using print, which I use at the end of the game to keep track of whether the score variable contains the correct variable at the end. I hope this workshop was helpful for you guys, and hope you guys make fun and creative games for HOTH 12. Thank you so much.